Time does not move in a straight line. Time does not come from a past, travel into a so-called now, and then through to a so-called future. What we know of existence is time is a cycle. There is no beginning of time because there is no beginning of experience. For there to be a beginning of time, my friend, there will need to be a beginning of experience. Now, of course, naturally speaking, normally speaking, you would say, of course, there's a beginning to experience. It's when I took my first breath, when I did my first cry as a baby. But in your experience, my experience, everybody's experience, I suggest to you, all you know is the appearance of the mind and the appearance of no mind, or the lack of appearance of a mind, I should say. Because in the same way that you don't know that you have a body consciously in deep sleep, because there is no mind to be aware of the sensations of the body, in the same way, before the body you have now, the only reason you was not aware of anything is because there was no mind. But in that lack of awareness of the mind, you stood, so to speak, stood as that pure consciousness that was aware of the lack of the mind. You see, even in our daily, day-to-day lives, we go from the dreamless sleep state, which is of no objective experience at all, into a dream state, into the waking state, and then back. Complete nothingness, objectively speaking, experientially speaking, back into a dream state, back into a waking state. It's a cycle. That's our actual experience. Within this so-called waking state, we assert that there's such thing as linear time. But even this so-called experience of linear time in this so-called waking state, my friends, that time completely disappears. Back again in deep sleep when there are no dreams. You are not aware of time. And then in the dream world, of course, time is even more different. Some people dream that they've lived for 2 years in a dream. And that's their experience, so nobody can take it away from them. Even in a so-called waking state, you would say that it feels like you've been watching this video for a certain amount of time. Another person would say it feels like another certain amount of time. A different amount of time. It's subjective. Even the so-called holy books, my friends, from the Bible to the Quran to the Bhagavad Gita, even they had a beginning. So even they are not infinite. They are not infinite knowledge. All that knowledge, again, disappears in what? In the deep sleep state, when there is no mind, no objective experience, no deliberation about, is God real, is God not real? Should I be Christian? Should I be Muslim? Should I be Jew? Should I follow Ogun? Should I follow Shango? Should I follow Thor? There is no deliberation because there is no mind to deliberate. This is one's experience. Wouldn't you suggest that it's your experience too? Life, reality is a cycle. And this is why people like myself suggest to you that we are living an infinite existence. There is no beginning, no end. The beginning of a form is a real experience. That means a seed, let's say, that's a form, a particular form. It grows into a bigger form, a plant. Now we could say that that's time changing, and that's fine. But the reality of it, the substance of it, the existence of it will only change form. The existence of it, the substance of it, so to speak, as in the raw materials of it, that which allows it to be, cannot disappear completely. It can only change. Meaning, the seed turns into a plant, the plant eventually dies, but as it dies, it goes back into the ground, nourishing the ground, or it becomes food for insects. And now that insect can have a life and do what it needs to do. There is only change. Just as they say in science, energy cannot be created or destroyed. We perceive this in our daily lives, that nothing completely obliterates into nothingness. It just isn't an experience with the mind. This is why life, I suggest to you, has to be infinite, because if life was actually finite, we could not have life with a finite things, finite existence. There are finite forms, as I said about the seed. The seed is finite. It will not be a seed forever. This hand will not be a hand forever. Your ears will not be ears forever. Forms change. Forms are finite, no doubt. The experience of them. But the background, so to speak, the totality of reality itself is an infinite existence, appearing as many different finite experiences to keep the infinity going, for infinity to be literally infinite possibilities. You see, if reality was finite, when somebody died, that body would not be able to then nourish the ground or nourish animals, the actual corpse. Some worms, some animals eat the corpse, as we know. It's their nutrition. Or again, it will fertilize the ground. It might sound a bit morbid, but it's the circle of life, just as it says in The Lion King. We know this. Nothing completely obliterates. So if the first man, let's say there was a first man and first woman and first animals, when they died, if they completely obliterated into nothingness, then there would be nothing for them to carry on the sustainability of life, of the ground. If water was finite, you drank your water, and that water went with you completely into this obliteration nothingness in so-called death, then there'll be less and less water. At some point, there'll be no water. If water completely disappeared when a cloud disappeared, there'll be no water again, or less water, I should say. Of course, the water comes back down, goes back up, comes back down, comes back up. It's a cycle, it's a system. But it's an infinite system, thus it does not need anything outside of it because it's infinite. As I said before, the so-called holy books themselves are not infinite, yet they claim there's an infinite entity. Finiteness claiming infinity. Finiteness being the finite books, finite words. But you see, this is fine. It's just how the mind tries to attempts to understand reality. It needs concepts. The mind needs concepts, such as an external God. But really, there is nothing external in truth. There's nothing external to pure consciousness. There's nothing external to that which all experience, both phenomenal and non-phenomenal, both objective and non-objective. This is the sticking point. Also non-objective experience, such as in deep sleep. That which we call consciousness or pure consciousness, that cannot have an outside to it because it's not an object. It's not an object to have dimensions to. It's that which dimensions appear to. Look within your own experience, as always. Don't just take my word for it. This is never dogma. Is it not in your experience that you cannot imagine or reason that you could be consciously outside of your consciousness? Isn't it that no matter what you're experiencing, there's always consciousness in the background allowing that experience to be? When I say consciousness, of course, I'm not talking about your identity consciousness. No, that's not what you essentially are. The identity is another appearance within consciousness. Consciousness, try to see it as just this empty space. Because it's empty is infinite. An infinite nothingness that allows for experiences to be. Because the experiences, the foreground relies on the background, that infinite nothingness, that infinite consciousness. It's actually the same thing. In the same way, my hand is not separate from the space around it, nor is it separate from your screen that you're looking at. It's just pixels from your perspective. Isn't your hand completely immersed within the space around it? Isn't that true for you too? The so-called nothingness. See, this nothingness holds things, somethingness. This is why we cannot have nothingness without the somethingness, because they are one and the same. They go hand in hand. Also, when we are experiencing with the mind, we can only perceive somethingness. We can only perceive things. We can only perceive objective experience, or phenomenal or non-phenomenal experiences. The mind cannot perceive no thingness, because the mind would need to disappear for that experience to be. When the mind does disappear, as we know, it does in deep sleep, meaning you are not consciously with the mind aware that you are sleeping. And if you are, that's a dream. That's not the dreamless sleep. The period of the night where there's no dreams at all, where there is no I, that no thingness is what is left when the mind has a rest, let's say. So that's more fundamental. Thoughts is easy to see for you. I suggest that thoughts are not fundamental to your existence. You are not always thinking the same thought. They change. So they are changing, therefore there is a gap to allow them to change. Or you could say there's a space in which they change within, which would have to be, again, more fundamental. If you have a board, a blackboard, the blackboard is fundamental to the writing on it. You cannot write on it without it. You cannot write in space. You cannot hammer a nail in space. There needs to be a background to allow an experience to be. And this is easy to see in so-called reality in terms of things like writing on a blackboard, hammering a nail in an object, thoughts appearing in the mind. But if we go deeper, the whole existence, the whole universe still needs a background. It still needs a background. And that background, I suggest to you, is this pure consciousness that, as I always say, that's what you truly are. It's deeper than the layer of your ego. It's deeper than the layer of your identity. It's the infinite, imperceivable background of all the foreground of experience. And just as you write on a blackboard, that chalk on a blackboard is not separate from the board. It's distinct. Yes, with perception, we can say it's distinct. But you could also say it's just the board. In the same way, you could say it's distinct, my face on this screen. But you could also say it's just a screen you're looking at. It's how you perceive, how you choose to perceive with the mind. Because the mind, again, has to separate, which is its job, to allow for this experience of duality, this experience of otherness, this ability for you and I to have an experience via a device. Because without the mind, what do you know? Nothing. So we need the mind to create this opportunity, this experience. So life shows us that time does not stop or start. Everything goes in a cycle. Nothing comes out of this cycle of existence. If you can say that you've perceived something leave existence, even if you said that, still that experience, my friend, is still in existence. Even if you could have an experience of something leaving existence, that experience will still be within existence. Part of the infinity. I don't want to make this video too long. I know I always say that, and I make like half-an-hour videos, but this time it's not going to be as long as it could be. I just wanted to come on and say this to help you see that, again, in your reality, my friend, don't you see? Can you see? Could you see? I hope you can see. If you are a truth seeker, if you're not, it's fine. That time doesn't actually move in a straight line in our actual experience. We make an idea of that. In our actual experience, everything is a cycle. Just because your life may end one day, we see in experience that the body will go into the ground, animals will eat it, they will help to fertilize the ground, plants will grow, somebody will eat that, become a strong person, have another baby, the cycle keeps going. It's a beautiful cycle. And your mind will always change, just to say. I'm not suggesting that you come back after so-called death as an ant, no. But as pure existence, you're already everything. Okay, I'm gone too long now. I said I want to make it short. Shorter than usual. But yes, I'll save that for another video, what I was going to say about so-called reincarnation. But essentially, all is one. One beautiful infinite cycle. Infinity just makes sense. A finite reality could not sustain itself. This is why our finite books that we call holy books suggest there's an infinite, uncaused entity that helps to sustain the finite existence. But I suggest to you, my friend, the very fact that these finite books are suggesting infinity as an entity outside of it is simply due to the lack of the mind's capability to understand its source is infinity already. So we create stories such as an outside entity. At some point, one must relax into the truth that you are that infinite truth that you've been seeking. You are me, I am you, essentially speaking. These minds create this difference. If you had no mind, if I had no mind, I ask you, if you had no mind, if your friend had no mind, if I had no mind, I ask you, what would be the difference between you, your friend, and myself? Have a wonderful day or evening. Please subscribe, comment, like, share, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace to you.